Welcome to Three Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. Today we're going to be talking about NXT from October the 18th, 2022. It was essentially an NXT reunion show where, a lot of NXT alumni were brought to the main roster. And for a little while, the show was actually pretty good. And then it got off the rails and I got very, very angry. And I'm currently very, very angry with NXT. Very angry. Specifically with Shawn Michaels and Triple H. And you probably already know why. But you can double it. Because I definitely have problems with the way they decided to put this show together. In addition to how they decided to book and use talent. Alright. So there's no news and notes outside of Shawn Michaels saying that eventually they're going to be moving NXT outside of the Performance Center, but they have no plans to try to shoot any big arenas or anything like that, which makes sense because they have an underdeveloped roster and it's not the same roster that it would have been 5 years ago or 4 years ago or whatever. It shouldn't be a big deal and nobody should be able to argue that. It'd be a waste of money to try to take it back to the same level that it was before without the same kind of talent, who have the same reputation and all that kind of stuff. It's best to keep things within a certain level, but they are going to be doing shows outside of the Performance Center. That's from what it sounds like. So they might actually do shows from different venues because they still do what they call the Coconut Circuit, which is the NXT Florida Loop. So they might start taping some shows on the Florida Loop, which makes sense. But that's the only note, really. Let's get into NXT. First match. Rhea Ripley defeats Roxanne Perez. This match was actually very good, and it was the beginning of the show. So we got to see a lot of Roxanne Perez. Now, for starters, looking at these two people standing next to each other, Rhea Ripley looked like an absolute monster. She looked like She-Hulk or some great ape, like King Kong climbing a building. And Roxanne Perez was tiny. I mean, freaking tiny. And you know what? That's the story they told. Roxanne Perez doing a scrappy underdog. Rhea Ripley was incredibly aggressive. She was very cocky. The crowd is fully behind Rhea Ripley. Chanting Rhea Ripley's going to kill you. There was some Judgment Day interference to protect Roxanne Perez, but ultimately she catches a riptide and gets pinned. Fine. I don't know if I would have beat Roxanne Perez here. I probably would have gave her opponent she can defeat. I wouldn't have given her somebody as tough as Rhea Ripley. I probably wouldn't have done that. But I guess they see something in Roxanne Perez and they just wanted to have a good match. So it was she's a good match fairy. She's one of those types. They're going to keep her around because they always can count on her to have a good match. But in terms of a push or anything like that, probably not. Otherwise, they wouldn't have beat her right before her big pay-per-view match, I mean, it just is what it is. Now, since we're on the subject of the Pick Your Poison stuff, the later Pick Your Poison match was Raquel Rodriguez versus Cora Jade. And this match was similar. When you look at Raquel Rodriguez, she's a massive human being. She's a Goliath standing next to this very small Cora Jade. Now, but this match was actually smarter because Cora Jade, being the smaller heel, is running away. She's being a little bit hesitant, but Raquel Rodriguez, when she gets her hands on her, is dominant, throwing her around and everything. So Cora Jade immediately goes outside, gets her kendo stick, tries to hit Raquel with it. Raquel catches it, snatches it from her, and then hits Cora Jade with it, causing a disqualification. So Cora Jade wins the match by disqualification. She starts to try to run away when Roxanne Perez attacked her from behind, hit her a couple of times. I think she also hit her with the kendo stick, and Cora Jade fled. So, not much. They didn't really give away anything when it comes to Cora Jade and Raquel Rodriguez, but it's pretty clear that they protected Cora Jade in this situation, which probably means she's going to do the job at Halloween Havoc. And I do need to do predictions. I forgot about that, but because I was so frustrated about something else. But we will certainly do predictions. So it's clear that they gave Cora Jade the win by disqualification because she's probably going to take the L at Halloween Havoc. which is probably why they beat Roxanne Perez. But neither one of them came out of this match came out of this pick your poison situation looking like they were the biggest stars in the company or anything like that. Neither one of them came out looking that great. It's very unfortunate, but this is how NXT is doing things now. So the Good Brothers talk about having a fight on their hands. They're the hottest tag team in the business. That's what, at least what Cameron Grimes thinks. I mean, I guess we have different definitions of hot because literally nobody gives a shit about the Good Brothers. I don't think you can find somebody who gives a shit about the Good Brothers in the Good Brothers household. I don't think they look in the mirror and just, curse themselves for even existing at this point. It just sucks so bad. But they did defeat the Schism later in the show. The Good Brothers and Cameron Grimes defeated the Schism. The match was kind of it was alright, I guess. The Gallows is still using the gas mask, which is a move that I really haven't seen in a long time. If you don't know what the gas mask is, it's kind of like a face choke slam. It's a weird looking move that we really should just get rid of because it doesn't look realistic. I've never seen anybody legitimately grab somebody by the face and pick them up. I've seen plenty of people grab somebody by the throat and slam them. I ain't never seen anybody grab somebody by the face and slam them. But whatever. After the match, the Good Brothers, of course, harassed Cameron Grimes for their money. But whatever. The Good Brothers, they exist. Cameron Grimes won, but I mean, ultimately, I don't know where this thing with Schism is going. Is it over? Can I hope and pray that it's over? Can Cameron Grimes finally go to the main roster and not be hanging around in NXT anymore? Because I feel like he's been there far too long. I feel like we've been there far too long. All right, second match on the show: Stacks versus a mystery opponent, which ended up being Shinsuke Nakamura in yellow. So Tony D'Angelo came out there and said this was about respect. This was about Stacks proving himself. And you want to know who his opponent is? Everybody was like, yeah. Everybody want to know who his opponent is? They're like, yeah. Then he says, you'll find out after this commercial break, which was a great line. So then when we come back, we find out that it's Shinsuke Nakamura. The crowd absolutely goes ape shit. Nakamura is freshly back in the United States from being one of Antonio Inoki's pallbearers, which is very sweet. The video was up on Antonio Inoki's YouTube channel. It was probably a pretty emotional thing for him. I'm pretty sure all in all, he really liked and loved Antonio Inoki. He was the guy who gave him an opportunity. But that Inoki-Nakamura relationship was not the best. It was not the best. Wasn't the best at all. Inoki was pretty tough. So maybe one day we'll go into Nakamura and Inoki. But everybody knows Inoki was pretty tough on those guys, especially in the training, but also with the Inokiism, the MMA stuff, guys who were getting their asses kicked in mixed martial arts. Nakamura was one of those guys who was constantly put in real mixed martial arts fights and getting beat up, but they had their ups and downs. So that's kind of what life is about, When your mentor dies, you don't remember the bad times. You only remember the good. You honor him. So that was the right thing to do. I really appreciated that. And I'm pretty sure that meant a lot to him to be a pallbearer at his funeral. Even though I think he had like 100 pallbearers. So it was like a lot of guys lifting Antonio Inoki's casket. Anyway, Stacks and Nakamura actually had a very good match that showed that Stacks actually has some potential. So this was kind of an honor for Stacks, So he went out there. He had a pretty good match. He took one Kinshasa, fell out of the ring, got in the ring, continued to fight. They gave him the old tough guy. Where he basically was like, come on, finish me, I dare you. And then he got another Kinshasa and was pinned. But even though he lost, Tony D'Angelo was proud of him and said that he showed guts that he didn't know Stacks had and that he's a proud member of the family and all this kind of stuff, which I thought was very good. So I was like, wow, this is very cool. Tony D'Angelo actually being uplifting, being a positive motivation to somebody. That's impressive. I like that. I don't know. I'm not sure if it's a babyface turn or if they're just, two guys who, appreciate one another. But I appreciated that out of Tony D'Angelo, that he, Stacks kind of screwed up before and he took his punishment like a man, but he stood and he fought. And even though he lost, he stood and fought. So that was good. That was great. Grayson Waller, he cut a promo by saying that he blinded Apollo Crews with his star power and said that he already beat him, and he's going to cap off the worst comeback in NXT history by beating him again. Then Chucky appeared, one of his couple of appearances on this show, telling Grayson Waller that it's going to be spin the wheel, make the deal for Grayson Waller and Apollo Crews. Grayson Waller was creeped out, of course, by Chucky and fled. He took off. Axiom and Nathan Fraser were talking about their series of matches, especially they was being real marks, talking about the moves and the counter moves and all that kind of crap. And Axiom said that he's going to actually cheer for Nathan Fraser. I was like, ugh, you want to cheer for the guy who beat you? But then I forgot Von Wagner was in that match. I said, well, anybody except Von Wagner. Von Wagner, Robert Stone, of course, made fun of them for even caring about being internet famous. I really think that this should have been left on the cutting room floor. I swear to God, we didn't need this segment. We didn't need this at all. Third match, Alba Fire versus Sonya Deville. Toxic Attraction came out with Sonya Deville. There was no Mandy at first. Ultimately, Sonya Deville got into some trouble. And then Toxic Attraction jumped into the ring and they jumped Alba Fire, beat her up. Mandy Rose came out there looking luscious as ever. Jesus. Ooh, baby. She's also coming back to work after a funeral. She was cutting her promo, talking about Alba Fire made the wrong decision of abducting her, and that when they have their match at Halloween Havoc, she's going to come back more violent and more ruthless than ever. And while she's cutting this promo, Alba Fire makes her own comeback. She escapes from 3 people who had a bat to her throat. She fought them all off. And I was just kind of like, is she a superhero? Like, how did she manage to fight off everybody? She fought off everybody and still had her red bat and threatened Mandy Rose with the red bat. And I was like, okay, they really putting Alba Fire over, but I swear, she cannot be the one that beats Mandy. Please don't do that. By God, don't do it. We'll talk about it later. Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams jumped Oro Mensah and Wesley while they were in the locker room. Oro Mensah and Wesley were in the locker room warming up. Then they brawled to the ringside area where they had the tag team match, Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams versus Oro Mensah and Wesley. And Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams win with the flying leg drop. And Wesley took an insane neck bump. This match felt cold, even though Melo has history with Wesley and with Oro Mensah. It just kind of felt like it was happening for no reason. You know, it was kind of like, I don't know. I would have preferred for Carmelo Hayes to cut a promo here or do something that was kind of important here rather than this sort of nothing tag team match. And it was quite short, too. This match was very short. I thought these guys weren't even going to be on the show. I remember saying before that these guys probably was going to get pulled from the show. Maybe they should have been. This show had 7 matches on it. That's entirely too many matches. Just have matches and have them be shorter. I mean, longer, if that's what you're going to do. Having 7 fucking matches, that made no sense. But, whatever. Next, we got Veer Mahaan. Veer Mahaan was asked, what did he whisper to Sangha to make Sangha walk away from Valentina Feroz? He said that what he said to Sangha was for Sangha's ears only. Sangha then came over and said that he's ready to listen to Veer. And Veer was like, sure you are, brother. Sure you are, brother. And they walked off together again. Okie dokie. Sure. All right. If you say so. There was a contract signing for the women's tag team championships. Zoe Stark and Nikita Lyons, of course, think they're going to win. But Casey Catanzaro and Kaden Carter said it's easy to be a tag team when you win, but how will you handle losing? There was a similar contract signing for the tag team championship, the men's tag team championships, with Idris Enofe and Malik Blade, with Pretty Deadly. And apparently next week is going to be Tag Title Tuesday, so they're going to have both tag team championships on the line. That ought to be very interesting. I don't understand why we had to have these contract signings with these very short, really not much in the way of content in these promos. It's like they didn't really do a good job of even getting any heat. It was just kind of like, we're going to win. No, we're going to win. And then that was it. It was like, okay, well, we really could have kept that. You know, like if there was going to be some real heat placed in these segments, then I would have said, okay. But there was no heat in these segments. There was no content, just general, I'm going to win. No, I'm going to win. It was like, did we really need to hear I'm going to win? No, I'm going to win. It's like that doesn't change people's interest in the match at all, right? Nobody cares. But what did increase my interest in the match, what did have content, what was a pretty good promo segment, Julius Creed versus Damon Kemp. So Julius Creed talked about how he watched over his little brother. And yes, he's nervous because he's been looking after him since he was a boy, since he peeked over that crib and saw him in it, which I think was a great visual. He said that he's going to use these nerves for good. And he made peace with what he's got to do to Damon Kemp. Damon Kemp said there's two sides to Julius Creed. There's the world-class athlete, tag team champion, and there's the jealous guy. Julius Creed said, what do he got to be jealous about? Damon Kemp has been in NXT for 5 months and has nothing to show for it. He has a sense of entitlement and that he was better than Damon Kemp in college and that Damon Kemp peaked in high school and is not even the best in his family, which is a nice little nod if you know who his brother is. His brother is actually Gabe Stevenson, which is interesting because his name is not going to be Kemp on the main roster. So, there it is. But Damon Kemp responded like, what is going to be your excuse when you lose? Not enough milk, not enough time to work out. And said that his brother's going to be standing in an unemployment line. He's going to need a job, which I think is a pretty good segment between the two of them. It wasn't the best, but between two guys who aren't really promo guys, I think it was solid. You know, Creed is actually growing in terms of his promo skills. He sounds like he should be a member of Imperium. Like that's just how he sounds. He just has that really well-trained athlete sort of perspective on things. And he just sounds like he should be a member of Imperium. Like both the Creed brothers probably should be members of Imperium. You know, American members of Imperium. Like it seemed like they would fit right in with either them or Alpha Academy. Like Alpha Academy is maybe a little too silly, but they look like they may fit into Imperium flawlessly. You know, and Creed's promo wasn't bad, and Damon Kemp's promo wasn't bad either. He has a little bit more charisma. So I wish we had got to see more of Damon Kemp before, you know, we throw him in a pay-per-view match. Like he's not bad from what I saw. But we haven't seen as much of him as we have as Julius Creed. So he's kind of an untested commodity here, which is very interesting for, you know, his first singles match. And it's also very interesting for Julius Creed, who's been a tag team wrestler this entire time, to have to work a singles match. But I like the stakes. I love the stakes. So that was pretty good. So then after that, the show hit a real skid, and I really didn't like that much of anything that came afterwards. Shotzi came out there because she is announced as being the host of Halloween Havoc. She hosted Halloween Havoc 2 years ago. She did a really great job with it. So they just decided to just do her again, which is fine. Zion Quinn then came out there to offer his services as the co-host for the show. Then Quincy Elliott interrupted and said he was a big fan of Shotzi and wanted to be the co-host. Called himself a scream queen. Look, at this point, we must discuss that I was watching NXT on the tablet while AEW Dynamite was on TV. If my tablet was not, look, I'm cheap, okay? Frugal is better. I like that word, frugal. If I had not bought that thing with my own money, if it was like a Christmas gift or something, I'd have smashed it on the floor. All right. I was absolutely dunzo with this show. Like I kind of knew this match was going to happen, but I really, really dislike Shawn Michaels and Triple H. Whichever one of them did this, whatever combination of people came up with this Quincy Elliott beating Zion Quinn to be the co-host of Halloween Havoc, fuck you. Okay? Period. You're out of your fucking mind. Why do we need 2 to 3 hours And I know it's probably going to end up being like 4 segments total of Quincy Elliott in costumes and stuff like that. I don't even want to see that. I'm good. Pass. You're going head up with AEW right now, and you decide to put on the most ridiculous stuff that you can possibly do. It is the wrong time to have a mid episode of NXT, and it's been mid for maybe 2 or 3 weeks now. NXT is still a fun show to watch, but it's not nearly as fun as it was 4 months ago, 5 months ago, or whatever. But Quincy Elliott defeats Zion Quinn in a very short match. Very short. This was all dumb. Shotzi was also out there partly to sell everybody on a tag team championship match she's going to be having on SmackDown, which I completely forgot about, to be quite honest. But she's not going to win, so it's not going to matter anyway, is it? No, it won't. Chase University, they had a vignette. Thea Hale is upset about losing to Kiana James, but Bodie Hayward thinks that Andre Chase will get her a rematch. And Thea Hale is very excited about this rematch that nobody promised her, but she thinks it's going to actually happen. Andre Chase then gave a history lesson for Halloween Havoc, weirding the kids out about the Chamber of Horrors and the Yeti. Then he gave them their homework is to watch the show, because apparently none of them are going to be on it, so they have to watch it. This was our second Chucky interruption, where then Bodie Hayward yelled at Chucky because Chucky interrupted Andre Chase. So it was a ballsy move, I got to tell you that. Then Chucky cussed out Bodie Hayward in a flurry of bleeps that really none of it made any sense. I didn't understand any of it. Then Bodie Hayward sat down, was kind of suitably chastened, and then Thea Hale started cursing. And I was just kind of like, what is going on here? I get we tried to shoehorn Chucky into this thing because, Halloween. Hey, it's Halloween stuff. Okay. It's WWE. And they're going to do some cross-promotion with USA Network. I hear the Chucky show probably needs it. And you know what? NXT probably does too. And both probably need to be cross-promoted. Okay. So there was a Halloween party backstage where Brooks and Jensen and Josh Briggs were trying to figure out what they were going to drink when it happens, when silly stuff happens on television. When people yell Halloween Havoc, when people say this Saturday or whatever. And then some girl started walking through the bar on her hands. Ike Minjiro was present. There was somebody else there. I'm trying to remember who it was, but I don't know. Oh, to back up a minute, that Hank Walker security guard guy was out there clapping at Quincy Elliott. Something telling me they're going to have like a gay storyline with these two guys. And that's going to be mad creepy, bruh. They better not, but it's NXT. There's no telling. Oh yeah, Indy Hartwell. Indy Hartwell was in the bar. She was hanging out in the bar. But all of this was the shits. Just the Halloween party. They should have started the Halloween party earlier in the show, and then had them tell a story throughout the show or something like that. But no, they just did a Halloween party segment. This show felt like it was written at the last minute. Now, they did have a really fun closing segment, the Kevin Owens show segment, where it's Kevin Owens, Ilya Dragunov, JD McDonough, and Brian Breaker. Kevin Owens decided he's going to single out JD McDonough and absolutely just make him look and sound terrible, which I'm pretty sure a lot of people on the internet loved because they don't like JD McDonough because of speaking out allegations or whatever. And I'm pretty sure that's also why Kevin Owens singled him out as the guy he's going to make fun of for the whole segment, because Kevin Owens is a woke idiot. So Kevin Owens called him creepy, said he feels uncomfortable to even sit next to him. JD McDonough said he's been on his best behavior and that these two guys can fight to see who are the toughest, but he's not interested in that. He's only interested in being the champion. Ilya Dragunov said that his Torpedo Moscow, which they're not calling it, was not a mistake. He hit Braun on purpose and saw chinks in his armor, and that Braun is human, and that he's going to win that title that should have been his in the first place. Braun Breaker responded that for months, nobody could stop Ilya Dragunov until he speared Ilya Dragunov, cutting him in half. And he says, as long as he's breathing, that title is his. Then they kind of went around the segment a little bit with JD McDonough saying that Ilya Dragunov ran him out of NXT UK, and he spent all of this time since thinking of ways to burn Ilya's soul. And he says that the physical pain is not, there's nothing he could do physically to stop Ilya Dragunov. But he knows that winning that championship will really set a torch to Ilya's soul. Ilya Dragunov said that JD McDonough will always be a contender and will never be the champion, which I thought was a fantastic line. That was a good line. That was good shit. Braun Breaker says that Ilya Dragunov is no different than JD McDonough, and that he's also always going to be a contender. Dragunov reminded Braun Breaker that the last time he was in a triple threat match, he lost. So then they got into a fight not too long afterwards. But the cherry on top of the segment, of course, was Kevin Owens and his tirade about how nobody wants JD McDonough to be the NXT champion. It got people standing up. And it was like, so he exposed JD McDonough's plan of, he's just going to wait for you guys to destroy each other. Then he's going to slide in and pin somebody and win the NXT title. And nobody wants that. I don't want that. No former NXT champion wants that. These people don't want that. You guys don't want that. Nobody wants this guy as the NXT champion. And everybody sort of agreed. And I was like, wow, he's got to win now, right? Like, you're telling me there's going to be hella heat if he wins? Well, shit, he's got to win now, right? So they brawled a little bit. They brawled a lot of bit, honestly. And then at the end of the brawl, Ilya Dragunov is still standing with the belt. And then we see Austin Theory. Austin Theory shows up with the Money in the Bank briefcase, smiling. And this was the second time, well, probably not the second time, probably more like the third, where I wanted to slam my fucking tablet. All right. Triple H literally sent this fucking kid back to NXT. This fucking guy was in a storyline with Vince McMahon, was in a segment with Stone Cold Steve Austin, was the former United States champion. All of this was before June of this year, before he even won the Money in the Bank. And since Triple H has taken over, which was in August, it has been downhill since. Not only has he lost fucking 16 matches straight, but now we're going to kick him literally back to NXT. This is fucking bullshit. All right? It's bullshit. There's no fucking reason for Austin Theory to be in NXT. There literally is no excuse for him to be in NXT. Oh, but he's so young. Fuck you. He should not be in NXT. This was a guy who was being groomed for a top spot in WWE when he was 21. This was, 4 or 5 years ago when he was in Evolve. You know, they pretty much knew he was going to NXT and going to the main roster and all that kind of stuff. Gabe Sapolsky was protecting him. He was Evolve champion for a really long time. I think he was Evolve champion for a long time. He had another belt too. I don't remember. I didn't know Evolve that much. But he was a champion of some sort in Evolve for a long time. They had been grooming this guy for a long time. His promos are good. His matches are good. And he has a great look. There's literally no reason for him to be in NXT longer than he was. Now, I understand he might have gotten into some trouble. You know, that's why he got sent back. And he got buried a little bit. By, forced to be the high school quarterback in the way. The stupid Bart Simpson or whatever in the way. But now, we're just fucking with him. To even tease that he's going to use the Money in the Bank. That he's going to use the Money in the Bank briefcase on the NXT championship. It doesn't put the NXT title over. It buries Austin Theory. It makes him look like he's such a fucking loser that he cannot even stand in the ring and he's not even worthy of losing to Roman Reigns. That's fucking stupid. Right? And we could add some star power to NXT. No. Leave the kid where he fucking was. You didn't replace him. Who did you replace him with? You just started pushing all the fucking old guys again. Look, I love Bobby Lashley, but the guy's 45. I love Seth Rollins, but the guy's almost 40. This guy's 25. At the same fucking night that you decide to demote Austin Theory, you have MJF, who's in that same age bracket, standing around having the promo of his life with William Regal. And Triple H looks like, hey, we could have our own version of MJF. At least somebody, a young guy who we can say is probably up next. But no, we're going to bury him instead. And we're going to make sure fucking Johnny Gargano and fucking Candice LeRae gets TV time. You gotta be fucking kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. You know? We don't send Dominic Mysterio, who fucking sucks. We're not sending him back to... We're not sending him to NXT. We send Austin Theory, who is infinitely better. Now look, I respect... Look, both of them could be on the main roster. Because Dominic Mysterio gets hella heat. You know, it works. But so did Austin Theory. He was getting hella heat. It's almost like, you know, Vince knew what he was doing. Since Vince took over, you know, when Vince was pushing him, he was on TV a lot, but he was getting a lot of heat. People hated Austin Theory. They was just yelling at him constantly. Triple H decided, oh, we're going to take all of that time and devote it to Damage Control, who couldn't get a mouse to fart in the fucking arena when they come out. And somehow that's a superior idea from the big brain of the King of Kings. Get the fuck out of here. It's stupid as fuck. Now, there is one positive to this. The single only positive to this is that Austin Theory would make a great rival to Bron Breakker. That's the only good thing about this, is that Bron Breakker was a guy who needs somebody. He's been champion all of this time, but there's always been something missing. They groomed him a little fast too during the Vince McMahon era, where they put the belt on him really quickly. You know, I think he was in the company less than 4 months before he won the title. He had less than 20 matches before he was the champion. They pushed him pretty hard. Then they took the belt from him and gave it to Dolph for a little bit. Then he won it back, but they made sure to showcase him. You know, he won the title on Raw, if I remember correctly. You know, so they did some stuff with Bron Breakker, but the one thing they didn't do, and the one thing they should have done, which is made sure he was developing a character and made sure they developed a rival. Right? There needed to be somebody, and I thought it would be Tony D'Angelo. That they flamed that out for some reason. I have no idea. There's really no good reason for it not to be Tony D'Angelo. And I thought maybe, okay, Grayson Waller. But then they handcuffed Grayson Waller to the mid-card. He can't leave, so he's stuck there. So it's not him either. They brought over guys from NXT UK, immediately started beating all of these guys, so it's none of them. So you kind of wrote yourself into a corner where maybe using Austin Theory is the only way to get out of this situation. You know, where you prevent Bron Breakker from destroying the entire division by, you know, putting somebody back in it that he hasn't beaten yet. Somebody who can have good matches, somebody who has good promos, somebody who has some star power, some star ability. Okay. That's the only positive to this. You know, but you could literally take, like they did with Dolph Ziggler, and send him back to NXT if you were going to do that. To me, it seemed like you needed your Randy Orton. That's really what makes WWE work. Is you have your top guys, your Kurt Angles, your Undertakers. They're going to be a little bit older. Your Chris Jerichos, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, those guys. But then underneath that, you got John Cena. And you got Randy Orton. And you got Bobby Lashley. And at the time, they had MVP. And you got Mr. Kennedy. You got your younger guys, Carlito and Johnny Nitro. And even to a degree, Jeff Hardy. At the same time, this would be like 2002 to 2008, you know? those young guys that was on the roster, that Chris Masters was another one. Occasionally they would come up, wrestle for the title, get beat, go back down. Is it really the worst thing in the world for Austin Theory to wrestle Roman Reigns and lose? Fuck, they just did it with Riddle. You know, they're doing it with fucking Logan Paul. What is the worst? Look, I'm not saying Austin Theory should beat Roman Reigns. I know he's going to lose. But give him the fucking chance. Give him the showcase. Randy Orton was put in an Elimination Chamber match, right? Against Goldberg and Triple H and Shawn Michaels and all these guys, and he lost. It didn't kill his career. All right? Didn't kill his career. Didn't hurt him at all, actually. Now, most people don't even remember it because it was so long ago. So, you can have your young guys. You had John Cena submit to Kurt Angle in matches. You can have your young guy that you see has a future, and you can say, God damn it, we can push the young guy. We can give him an opportunity. Get him on that level, test him out, see how he responds, and then push him back down. Let him climb back up, push him back down. Let him climb back up, push him back down. He's young. He can take it. He'll be all right. But this idea that we're just going to beat the fucking guy to paste to the point where he's not even in the conversation anymore. He can't even beat fucking random mid-carders that we pulled off their couch 2 months ago. He can't even beat those fucking guys. After this guy was in WrestleMania fighting Stone Cold Steve Austin. That doesn't make any fucking sense. That literally is stupid. Now we have to sit back and say, well, at least he's going to have good matches with Braun Breaker. What? You think Vince McMahon spent the last, 4 months of his career giving the rub to a guy who's going to be the fucking NXT champion? That wasn't... It's Triple H, man. He fucking sucks, bro. He sucks hard. Him and Shawn Michaels are clearly not up to the task. Like I was having fun with NXT, and I'm kind of pissed that they kind of fucking with it now. You know, it's not the fun show that it used to be. It used to be silly and over the top, and it was wacky as fuck with, interesting new characters and stuff like that. But now they're going back to 100 matches on the show. They're all short. You don't really get to see anybody do anything in terms of character. A lot of the segments lack content. They're not pushing the right people, or even people that are pushing, they're burying other people. I mean, it got Tiffany Stratton, who should have been a star, should be getting pushed. She was getting buried by losing to fucking Wendy Chu. Why is she even wrestling Wendy Chu? That wasn't even necessary. You had Nikita Lyons, who the internet is buzzing about. She can't get a match with Mandy Rose. Instead, she's going to sit in the fucking tag team division with Zoe Stark. Come on, man. Are you fucking serious? What stars are they making in NXT? What really are they doing? The only person who's really getting over is Braun Breaker. That's it. They had so many people pop up within the last year, really get over hard or hot. And then they just buried them. Like I said, Grayson Waller was one of them. Tony D'Angelo was another one. The Creed brothers. Ivy Nile. She was over really hard at one point. They took her out of the ring. Now she doesn't do anything. It was like, I don't get it. The storytelling that NXT 2.0 had was fun. It was engaging. It's part of the reason why the audience started to come back. And now we're just going to blow it up and do this shit. Not enough Carmelo Hayes on this show. I mean, why not move Carmelo Hayes up to the NXT title? We didn't need to bring down Austin Theory. I don't know, man. It's like I said, the only positive is that Austin Theory is going to have good matches with Braun Breaker and could be an effective heel against him. But just about anybody with any real talent, fucking Chad Gable could have done that. Chad Gable should be bumped down to NXT so he can be the NXT champion. Hell, he would fit right in. He's small. He doesn't fit into the title picture at all on the main roster. Mustafa Ali, move him ass back down to NXT. Ricochet, move his ass back down to NXT. There's a lot of people you could have moved back down to NXT out who, we've seen them for a long time. We know that they're probably ain't got nothing going. It likely ain't going nowhere. But Austin Theory had something. He was going somewhere. That I would be pissed if they did the same thing with like Carmelo Hayes. If they got Carmelo Hayes over on the main roster, then shoved him back down to NXT, I would be like, what the fuck are you doing? The guy is ready to go to the next level. He should at least be in high-level, non-title feuds. At least. But the moment Triple H took over, he's in the fuck around gang, hanging out with fucking Alpha Academy. Hopefully WWE pulls a WWE. I've been yelling about this for 10 minutes. But hopefully WWE pulls a WWE and nothing comes of this. And it's just a tease to get people talking. Because this is not good. It's a waste of money in the bank. I would rather he fight Roman and lose than win the NXT title. Because at least we can say he was in a match with Roman Reigns and people got to see him. Because at least we get to gauge, his talent and his skill level against somebody who's much better than him. He's only going to get better by wrestling people who are much better than he is. If he's in NXT, he's one of the best people down there already. And he's better than Brian Breaker. It helps Brian Breaker. It could help some of the other baby faces that are down there. But he's not some grizzled old veteran that you could do that shit with. That's what you had Ciampa in NXT for. That's what you got Cameron Grimes down there for. That's what you could bring and send Apollo Crews down there for. You don't take a guy who has some kind of, name and notoriety already and send him down to NXT. It just doesn't make any sense. All right, let's get into these Halloween Havoc predictions. Let's get into this goddamn thing. I'm getting frustrated. Mandy Rose versus Alba Fire for a singles match, non-gimmick, for the NXT Women's Championship. I'm surprised that this was a match that had a kidnapping involved with it and there's no gimmick. I'm going to kidnap you, but we're not involved in any kind of gimmick match. So that's it. That's interesting. As much as over as Alba Fire is, and as much as it might be time for Mandy Rose to finally leave NXT, because I think this is what's holding back like a Tiffany Stratton and some of the other women from moving up, is the fact that Toxic Attraction is there. And they're still the top heel females on the roster. And having Alba Fire win the belt, you open the door for Blair Davenport and Aoife Valkyrie and Isla Dawn and all those kind of people to start coming in. At the same time, I'm not really a huge fan of Alba Fire, so this is another situation where I was kind of confused because I figure, okay, Nikita Lyons is a shoe-in to win the NXT Women's title. Then they decided to do something else. And I figure, okay, Roxanne Perez is a shoe-in. Then they decided to go in a different direction. And it seems like their C spot, their C plan is never as good as the A plan or the B plan. Like Alba Fire is not nearly as over as Roxanne Perez was before that, breakup of her tag team. And before she won the breakout tournament and, had her really good match with Mandy Rose and everything, she was like over. But Nikita Lyons, of course, basically crashed the fucking internet at one point. I could see them having Alba Fire win just so they can get Mandy off this roster and get Toxic Attraction off this roster, because they've got plenty of factions on the main roster and they like doing faction warfare, and I can see Toxic Attraction and Damage Control kind of going at it. I'm still going to say Mandy Rose, though. I don't think Mandy's leaving. Not yet. So we're going to go with Mandy Rose. Second match. Apollo Crews versus Grayson Waller. Spin the wheel, make the deal. So it's probably going to be some kind of no disqualification thing, no count out thing, or whatever. I'm going to go with excuse me. I'm going to go with Apollo Crews. It just seems like this feud needs to be over, though. This feud is over eyes. because of Grayson Waller poked Apollo Crews in the eye. And Apollo Crews can't handle having his eyes poked. Now he's bleeding from the eyes. You know, he's got stigmata and all kinds of other shit because he got poked in the eyes. I don't get that, but all right. Just going to go with Apollo Crews. I don't think this match should even be on this show. I think it should be on TV. This is one of those matches we should have bumped it to TV, if we're being honest. Fourth match, ambulance match. Julius Creed versus Damon Kemp. If Julius loses, Brutus Creed will have to leave NXT. I think this is a fine way to get rid of the Creed brothers, because if we get rid of Brutus, then Julius is going to leave on his own, which, you know, is natural, right? I don't see Julius letting Brutus leave and then he continues to hang around. So I'm going to go with Damon Kemp winning, and the Creed brothers are going to leave NXT. I think there's a spot for them on the main roster. I think the Usos need fresh opponents, and the Creed brothers could be really good fresh opponents for the Usos. I still think that the Creed brothers probably work better as a small part of a bigger group, which is why I keep saying they need to like join Imperium or Alpha Academy or something like that. Because them and Diamond Mine was absolutely perfect. You know, it fit them flawlessly. And considering I thought Diamond Mine was going to be an absolute flop, and then for most of the part it was. But the Creed brothers were clearly the breakout of the group, and I think they could do it again. You know, they're very good. So I'm gonna go with Damon Kemp, and I think the Creed brothers are going to be on their way out. They're going to be probably moved up to the main roster, the rest of the Usos. All right, Roxanne Perez versus Cora Jade. Spin the wheel, make the deal, weapons wild. I think we're going to get Roxanne Perez winning this match, mainly because Roxanne Perez has looked like an absolute goof throughout this entire feud. Not only did she get turned on and beat up and hit with a stick, but she also lost the singles match that they had against each other last time. She got pinned in the pick your poison thing. I mean, we need to add some character. We need to add some personality to Roxanne Perez. And this match likely is not going to do it. But it ought to at least... I'm not even sure this is going to be the blow off to this feud. I'm pretty sure they're probably going to have another match after this. But we got to give Roxanne Perez some kind of win. You know, like she's still a scrappy underdog, but her and Cora Jade are about the same size, so she doesn't need to play scrappy underdog here, right? She can be technical Marvel with a little bit of weapons stuff inside. I'm going to go with Roxanne Perez. All right. Ladder match for the vacant NXT North American Championship. Carmelo Hayes, Oro Mensah, Wesley, Von Wagner, and Nathan Fraser. So no doubt this is the show opener, right? Right? We're going to open the show with this. I'm not thrilled about Carmelo Hayes being in this match. I'm more apt to think that Carmelo Hayes should be in the main event, wrestling for the NXT title. Especially when you really think about the storyline that they've got. It's hard to have a 3-man feud. It really is. Like, there's some real heat between Dragunov and McDonough. Could be fun to have just a match between those two guys. Also, could have been really fun to just have Braun Breaker versus Ilya Dragunov, considering Braun Breaker's already beaten JD McDonough. Could have been very interesting to have Carmelo Hayes versus Braun Breaker, considering I'm not sure if they've had a match yet. But Carmelo Hayes is ready for that spot. But so Carmelo Hayes is kind of stuck at the North American title division, and I don't understand why. It's not really necessary. So I'm going to go with the idea of them having a fresh new champion, because putting the belt back on Carmelo Hayes would be an offense to Carmelo Hayes, if we're being honest. To think that this is kind of his ceiling, is that he can be the North American champion, but he can't be the actual NXT champion. That would suck. But none of the other options are any good. Oro Mensah is a graham cracker. He just exists, you know. You have the same thing for Wesley. He's basically just a graham cracker. Von Wagner is a saltine cracker, and Nathan Fraser is also a saltine cracker. So none of these people are really a good secondary choice. You know, like none of these people are good secondary choices. So that leads people to say, well, just put the belt back on Carmelo Hayes. And it's like, okay, but we've already did that. And we've been doing that for a long time, and he had a great run. We don't need to keep him in this spot. What made his run so fun is that he had matches with guys like Solo Sikoa and Cameron Grimes, and these were sort of interlocking feuds where he was constantly involved with these dudes while also kind of having open challenges and big matches with Ricochet and stuff like that. Like, let's not try to reignite that flame. But literally, I'm looking at everybody else in this match and saying, what the hell do you do? Do you give it to Nathan Fraser? Like, this guy's plain as shit. Like, there's literally nothing. He's got nothing going for him. Like, we haven't seen him cut a promo, really. He kind of talks backstage, but that's it. Wesley is the shits when it comes to promos. Oral Mensa, he just got on the roster not too long ago. So he's kind of an unproven commodity. And Von Wagner is one of the biggest pieces of horse shit ever perpetuated upon the American public. And I don't want Robert Stone to ever succeed at anything. So by default, we have to give it back to Carmelo Hayes, right? Maybe they'll do something slick and find their way out of this thing, but I don't know. I guess Carmelo Hayes, because who else you going to pick? There's no other options. There's just literally no other options. All right, the main event of the show: Braun Breaker versus Ilya Dragunov versus JD McDonough, triple threat match for the NXT Championship, and then also the looming threat of Austin Theory. Now, I spent maybe way too long, 10 to 15 minutes, absolutely having a meltdown about Austin Theory and the Money in the Bank being teased for this match. And I truly believe they're going to do it. I think they're going to do it. I think they're going to have Austin Theory cash in the Money in the Bank on Braun Breaker, who's going to win this match. And he's going to take the NXT title. And that's going to be the feud going forward for the next several months. It's going to be Austin Theory and Braun Breaker. Fine for Braun. Okay for Austin Theory, I guess. But he could definitely be doing a lot better. We'll be better off feuding with, Seth Rollins for the U.S. title, or, feuding with Gunther for the Intercontinental title or something like that. But no, he's going to be wrestling for the NXT belt. Okay. Like I said, this match, I don't like triple threat matches. I don't like fatal four ways. I just, But they've done a decent job. Ilya Dragunov is intensity personified. I would not be angry if he won. I actually would think it would be great if he won. He would be a great NXT champion. He would be a great rival for Braun Breaker. I think he's older than Braun. I don't know how much older. I don't know how old Ilya Dragunov is. He's kind of an absolute, he's an absolute mystery to me. I don't know anything about him before he popped up on WWE TV. He's 29. Okay. So he's got 5 years on Braun Breaker. He's probably got that all that time probably on the independents. So he has probably had a lot more experience. And that's what Braun needs. He's the guy that they're grooming in NXT. So he needs to be in the ring with people who have more experience. And Ilya Dragunov has more experience. JD McDonough has more experience. I would not be surprised if they do the cash in. But I think since they teased it, they probably won't do it. I think it's just something they wanted to tease, to get people talking. At least I hope that's what it was, because it got me talking. It got me all burnt up. But since I got it out of my system, I'm starting to calm down a little bit. And now I'm feeling like I got trolled. I'm feeling like, somebody rang my doorbell and left burning shit on my porch. And I'm like, wait a minute. You get angry and you stomp it out. And then you're like, these damn kids. That's kind of how I feel about this whole Austin Theory cashing in the Money in the Bank for the NXT title. I just kind of feel like, they're throwing human shit on my porch and lighting it on fire. It's bullshit, But once you put it out, you're kind of like, okay, maybe ruined a pair of shoes. But all in all, they got their chuckles out of me. I don't think they'll do it. I don't think they're that stupid. All right. I think it's just a nice little tease to add a wrinkle to NXT. But, as far as a winner, I'm going to choose Ilya Dragunov. I know that if you walk out of the show or the show goes off the air with you having the belt in your hands, the chances of you winning drastically go down. All right. Ilya Dragunov was the last man standing at the end of that segment, which meant the chances of his victory went down. I'm still going to go with Ilya Dragunov. Now, I think it probably would be a little bit better because Ilya Dragunov is a super babyface and is probably more over as a babyface than Braun Breaker is right now. If Ilya Dragunov was to win this match and then they do the cash in and have Austin Theory beat Ilya Dragunov, and then maybe it's Dragunov and Theory going forward. That's entirely possible too. That would shake up NXT quite a bit. So I'm going to go with Dragunov. I'm going to say that the cash in is a troll. I hope it's a troll. I hope they're not that stupid. But it's WWE going WWE, man. They're going to do what they do. And hopefully if they do cash it in, at least maybe they'll build the show around Austin Theory and then it'll be somewhat better. But it looks like a solid show from top to bottom. It ought to be fun. I think that the NXT lost a lot of talent. They did all of these mass call-ups lately, and they pulled 4 or 5 people from the roster. That's usually the problem with NXT. Is they have these big call-ups. They called up Solo Sikoa. They called up Legado del Fantasma. They called up some other people too, to basically just replenish the roster that Vince McMahon decimated with the firings and everything. But and then there's some injuries on NXT. Of course, Tiffany Stratton is hurt. But some of the other people have left or been moved out of the way, like Roderick Strong or Ike Minjiro. So they need to replenish the NXT roster. And I can see them wanting to move Austin Theory down there for that. That somebody has to play a certain role down there. Okay. But, there's still people in the Performance Center. There's still people that they use on TV. Duke Hudson and Zion Quinn and guys who might have something if they actually nurtured them and actually tried to help to get them over, but they don't. They don't even try. There's still some people from NXT UK, I think, that have not been fired, that have not showed up yet. Especially some women from NXT UK that were not fired, that have not shown up yet. So it ought to be an interesting show, but it definitely shows how weak the roster is. And some of these matches, maybe 1 or 2 of them, definitely the Grayson Waller Apollo Crews match, is probably better off not even being on this show. So whatever. But what do you guys think? I bitched way too long on this. I bitched longer than this than I planned to. Thank you guys for your time. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.